appreciate the introduction, and certainly not deserved, but it is fun to be in Ohio presenting to a group of mostly friendly faces. I've seen Bob at grazing events before, again, beardless, and Dr. Barker was in here earlier, and I don't know if he's still in here, but again, with the number of students he has, wouldn't remember me, was in his horticulture class talking about carryover weeds and soil, and so those are the things that I've been able to take and spread some wings and get out and get some experience, and excited to come back and chat with people that are friends and more like family, at least from a state border standpoint. So wanted to give a little bit of background about myself. Grew up in East Central Ohio, probably the most convenient speaking engagement I've had this year, or at least in the past 12 months. It's about 30 minutes down the road. We live right off of Route 40, so I turned right, turned left, and that was it, and it was super easy. But again, a product of a very strong Ohio Forage program in Licking County. It's where I found my love for small ruminants, passion for animal science, which led me to Ohio State. Started up in Worcester, thought I was going to get a 2-year degree and work in the swine industry for the rest of my life, and really learned a lot there, a lot of tools that we're using on some larger scale sheep production for myself, for other producers, and so all of those experiences have been beneficial. Found my way down to West Virginia University, where I finished a master's and PhD in parasite immunology, animal science. So any parasite questions, we have a small ruminant specialist that call him first, but if you happen to run into me, I'm happy to answer those. From there, went up to Penn State Extension and really enjoyed my time there. Producer education was where I feel like I've been focused and pursuing from seeing a number of Ohio State Extension individuals and learning from them. So from that point, jumped on board with the American Land Board as their sustainability director, and then also started New Slate Land Management, my wife and myself, along with another couple from Mount Vernon, where our primary focus with that business is vegetation management services for solar companies, managing their forage with our sheep. And so we're going to talk a little bit about solar grazing today, as Bob has asked. So when we think about solar installation or solar panels, we're going to talk mostly, I'm going to talk today mostly on the community scale, utility scale side of things. Has anybody seen a solar site, solar farm? If you're from Ohio, driving on a road, you've probably seen one. Have you seen any big ones? Yeah, it's crazy. And the big ones we have here are small ones in Texas. We were given a grazing workshop in Texas, and the site we were doing our example on was 5,500 acres of I guess what you would call contiguous ground. There were a couple of those township roads that went through it, but it was glass as far as the eye can see. And so for a long time I sat on the fence of this situation where we're taking out ag production acres and installing energy, and wrestled with why is this happening, follow the money, and really ultimately what it comes down to is trying to understand what's the demand. And we think about energy demand globally, it's increasing. When we think about energy demand locally, it's increasing. An individual from AEP higher up, can't remember his name, we were at a conference in Columbus, and he dropped the fact that Columbus and surrounding suburbs are projected to use more electricity than New York City by the year 2030, which for me, I've seen New York City, that blows my mind. That's a big city to me. And when we look at Columbus, that drive from Jacksontown, Ohio to OSU looks very different today than it did 10 years ago, 15 years ago. I mean, where we're sitting right now is the hotbed of what I'd consider an industrial revolution in manufacturing, technology, data storage. When we think about the companies that are storing that data and what their stance on energy is, it's no surprise that they're pushing for quote-unquote clean energy or energy derived from these solar sites, solar farms. So what's the value of capturing sunlight? Had the opportunity, the State Farm Bureau meeting was over in Western Ohio at a site that OSU is doing some ag-focused research, and the number was given that if we were to collect every ray of sunlight on an acre of ground, it's worth $220,000 annually. And when you hear that number and know a solar panel cannot collect 100% of what's being emitted from the sun and reaching the Earth's surface, you start to understand where the money's coming from to lease these acres and to install these solar sites. So that's the demand aspect of this, and trying to wrap our heads around as agriculturalists and farmers and ranchers, why is this happening? Ohio's unique. You go, just another example real quick, go to Kansas, where they're the number 2 or 3 state for wind energy. In my opinion, you'd think, oh, wind energy, okay, well, they must be on the list somewhere for solar installation. They're 49th, which was surprising to me. And so, again, it's state by state, and we're seeing some interesting things here in Ohio at the rate those are going in. The reason I put this graph into the presentation, we were thinking about different classes of solar. If we look at the key at the bottom, residential, commercial, community, and utility, you don't need to focus on that utility CSP. That would be a centralized capture of solar energy. Residential, rooftop, we're talking about it today. You're going to see it on your phone if you have Facebook about installing solar for free on your roof when you get home. Commercial, that's really in that the rooftop of industrial building over parking lots. And then community solar, right around that, I'd say less than 100 acres. Nobody has a really good definition. A lot of states would call that about 30 acres just because of what they've passed previously with installation guideline. And then utility scale, and my definition is 100 acres and up. And certainly, as we've talked, there's some big ones that are certainly in that up category over 100 acres. When we think about also what's creating the boom and the growth, well, as technology increases, price of those installations decrease. And as our pricing is going down, the availability or ability to install those sites is increasing. When we think about acres used for 1 megawatt of generated electricity, about 6 acres. That number, I've been told, is right around 5.5 this year. In 20 years, is it going to be 3? Is it going to be 2? If you look at the phone in your pocket, it looks very different today than it did 10, 15, 20 years ago. So just something to consider there. The other thing I ought to touch on is when we're talking solar, we talk in megawatts. To me, it's a foreign language. To you, unless you've got a career off-farm that's dealing with energy and electricity, probably a foreign language. When we think about 1 megawatt, we're talking about 1 million watts of energy. It is a significant amount of power that's being generated every 6 acres. So it pulled some graphics from SEIA, SEIA.org. If you want to do some reading on the trade organization, trade association for solar energy, really good resources there. When we think about Ohio, where we rank right now 13th in installed capacity. We look at projected numbers. We rank 8th. That's updated as of last night. That is the newest graphic. We were previously 7th. But we think about our other states, California, Texas, North Carolina's up there from a total installed capacity. I believe they're 4th, maybe 5th. And 10 years ago, they installed solar all over the place. The difference is they were 30-acre sites, 6-acre sites. Now they're seeing a boom in more utility scale. So again, a map pulled from that trade association, give you an idea of where these are being installed. Is that terribly surprising to anybody that looks at that? Where's the bulk of our population, our energy usage coming from? It aligns with what we would expect. So ultimately, agrivoltaics, that's what we'd like to talk about. This is a grazing conference, and so this is the stuff we can get excited about. When we think about agrivoltaics, book definition, agrivoltaics pairs solar with agriculture, creating energy and providing space for crops, grazing, and native habitats under and between panels. I love bees, think we need pollinators. I love crops, think we need those, but we're at a grazing conference, and so we're going to talk about the grazing aspects of agrivoltaics. What's one of the greatest hurdles to livestock production, sheep production, specifically here in the East? This is the Q&A part for you guys. Land access. Access to grazable acres. When I first kind of workshopped this presentation, had delivered it a couple different places, and we think about that east part of the equation. And yes, I think that's very true. When we think about the sheep industry in the western application, there's a lot of range flocks that are grazing on acreage that is not owned. And we look at that Bureau of Land Management and those public acres. And all of a sudden, land access is still our biggest issue in any livestock enterprise. So if we identify the need for agrivoltaics in these solar operations, what's the goal of a solar panel? Collect sunlight. You see, these are softballs. We're doing good here. What's enemy number one to collecting sunlight? Clouds. Clouds good. Clouds create shade. So the other thing that creates shade would be vegetation. And when we think about a job, yeah, exactly, a job that I don't want to take on, and that's weed eating up underneath that panel. Someone's gone through and brush hogged this previously. This site has obviously not been maintained to the level that allows it to capture that sunlight and produce energy in an efficient manner. Vegetation management is a vital part of the long-term plan for that solar site. And so this is something during the development stage, during construction, companies are thinking about how are we going to manage vegetation? What's our budget look like for the 30-year project? When we think about the lifespan of how long some of these projects are installed, 30-year average with a 5-year kick, an additional 5-year kick after that. So 30 to 40 years is what we're looking at. So it's long-term. I'm hoping my time grazing sheep under panel, 30 years gives me hopefully a career, and maybe I can retire raising sheep full-time and utilizing their benefits as a grazing animal. It's a long time, and it's happening every year. It's not year one and then they call me back in year 5. They need you there every year for an extended period of time. And as we talked earlier, an extended grazing season that we're seeing with weather patterns now. So why grazing? Why sheep? I'm going to hustle a little bit through these last slides. Frankly, they fit. And honestly, the term green on green from those companies that I had mentioned earlier is really attractive. We have the Verizons of the world, the Metas of the world that are now publicizing that, hey, we've got sheep grazing the sites that we're buying energy from. These have been in the Wall Street Journal and other very public consumer-facing publications because it's a really good look. It is really good PR. And I'm okay with that. As long as they're paying me to graze sheep, let's sell this to people. So they fit not only from a stature standpoint, but when we think about maybe some of the cropland, maybe some of this reclaimed mine ground that's going into a solar installation, what type of weeds am I going to be faced with? And do I have just a blanket herbicide application that I can get out there and spray from the four-wheeler, walk it? I can't get my boom sprayer out there and be effective. The nice thing is, we've got a field of beans here that had been fenced off, obviously had not been sprayed. And the point of that video is that ewe doesn't go straight for that very palatable legume that's in that sward. She's going straight for that weed, and that's something that we can capitalize as vegetation managers. So when we think about the big question everybody wants to ask, well, how many sheep can I put out there? How much are they going to pay me to provide this service? It's a mixed bag of answers you're going to get. Classic extension answer of it depends. And when we think about this part of the country, in fields that are fertile and in years that we get average rainfall, that number of 3 to 5 ewes per acre is not out of the realm of possibility. That's probably what we're seeing on our home pasture ground right now. We moved to southeastern Pennsylvania, very fertile soils, and had a gentleman over there talking to him. He's stocked at right about 8 ewes per acre, and said, I could probably run 10 if I had them. This on? No? Can I just yell? Is that okay? Okay. So yeah, he's stocked pretty high for what I'd expect. And when we think about what it's going to take in year 1, it might take half a ewe per acre. By year 2, as that forage establishes, we might need 2 ewes per acre. By year 3 through 5, all of a sudden we're up to our stocking capacity there of 3 to 5 ewes per acre. And I think the biggest takeaway, at least what I'm taking away, is to have a sustainable business, a sustainable grazing system. All of the drought discussion we've had, we have to be flexible. And so this number is going to kind of waver back and forth year to year. When we think about the dollar aspect, don't take this home and run with it. There are people getting paid less. There are people getting paid much more for this service. But what you need to remember, if this is an avenue that you'd like to pursue, this is a paid service. They have a budget during the development stages that they're going to pay a mowing company to go in and scalp that ground, or they can pay me to provide the same service with sheep. And it tends to be more of a hybrid model. When I have an early flush of spring forages, maybe I need to implement some mowing. I think it also provides, from a sheep parasite standpoint, provides opportunity to extend my rest periods. When I graze, rest 45 days, mow, rest 45 days, all of a sudden I'm back to a 90-day rest period for that parasite life cycle. So a lot of opportunities there to kind of play with and really optimize a hybrid model. As a reminder, I get a lot of questions if we're at an event, if I'm personally at an event, and I hear people, what are we going to do to the U.S. sheep industry? And if you're going to raise all of a sudden 5,000 more sheep as an individual in the state, well, my market at Mount Hope is going to be gone because you're going to flood everything. Ultimately, if we zoom out and take a big picture at where we're at in the U.S., for the U.S. sheep industry, we're importing between 60 and 70% of the lamb that's consumed every year. That number I've heard is north of 70. This is a conservative estimate. This is something in agriculture. If I told you, we're importing 70% of the beef that we eat every day, you'd be shocked. Same with corn, soybean, pick your commodity. This is something in the sheep industry we have just come to accept and say, okay, well, Australia and New Zealand, what are we going to do? This is an opportunity to recapture some of those imported accounts. This is an opportunity for me to supply a grocery chain like Kroger. Right now I don't have the capacity to fulfill their year-round supply. All of a sudden, when we have an opportunity, when I have acreage to do that, the opportunities fall in line with that. So again, just wanted to plug the American Land Board. If you're not familiar with it, check out the website, both the producer-facing side and the consumer-facing side, and learn more about that. Take advantage of some of those producer resources. Here's a number of resources. I just wanted to provide a snapshot of those. One of my favorite resources that they do have, and if you haven't seen it, order some, give them to your neighbors. and ultimately it's just to pat yourself on the back as a sheep producer, assuming we have some of those in here. But really highlighting the sustainability report in the top right, highlighting what we're doing as an industry to be an environmentally friendly protein, what we're doing as a family farm aspect of agriculture. And it's a cool thing to read about, and again, pat yourself on the back about. With that, ALB is really committed to producer education. That was one of the focuses with my position. We had 3 targeted grazing workshops in 24. We're going to have 6 in 25, along with a couple of emerging entrepreneur workshops. And if you're interested, get a hold of me, and we can find a spot for you in one of those classes. So with that, happy to take any questions if we have time. And then also, that's a cell number, email if you want to ask later in chat. Yeah.
2 questions.
Yep.
What's the lifespan of solar panel field? And the second one is, many of us are sheep producers in here today. You didn't have close, there's enough sheep even presently here.
Yes.
To do what you need to do.
So the first question, what's the lifespan on a solar site? And total, when we look at lease agreements, most of those lease agreements are between 30, most are 30 years with extension options. And so I've seen 3 extension options that have maxed out at 45 years. I've seen some 20-year with 2 10-year options. The likelihood of I don't know the lifespan of the actual panel. And they have all of the programs, all of the metrics to say, well, when we reduce efficiency, just like my cell phone battery life, at some point I say, oh, I've got to replace this because I can't hold a charge for 6 hours. At some point, the technology will outcompete where their current panels are at, and it's not. What will happen is they will replace all of those old panels, most likely, or they will keep all of the racking system in place, replaced with newer panels with newer technology in them to carry out the remainder of that lease agreement. And then on the sheep discussion, no, we don't have enough sheep today. And if we look at trends of where population growth is on the sheep side going, it's been negative. I believe this year we're up 1%. But the nice thing about livestock in general, and especially sheep, is they can be prolific. And they do multiply if we have the space to allow them to. And so that to me is more of a hurdle to get through than just a brick wall. You say, oh, can't do it. Because if we don't do anything, then we'll only eat Australian lamb. So
We can probably take one more. Hate to cut it off.
you say are not or are? Yeah. So some are. Yeah. So as with even in agriculture, we have companies that we deal with that you say, oh, you know, these are easy people to get along with, and they're willing to listen to me as someone who's done this for a long time, or a little, at least some time, where maybe they haven't done it at all. They're willing to listen and have a conversation. Then other companies say, well, this is our manual and this is what we have to stick with. And so a lot of it is just variation company to company. And, you know, if it's too much of a hassle with one company, there are plenty of others to run down the road and partner up with. I will say, you know, in the short period of time that really this has been blowing up in the Midwest, we've seen agrivoltaics go from, you know, what is that to, oh, I've heard about that, we're really interested. The number of people at solar energy companies that now have an agrivoltaics title is, I think, really encouraging, and I think it is a testament to the majority of those companies saying we need to commit to this. This is important. And at the end of the day, when we look at Ohio, the majority of those sites are not going to get permitted, are not going to get installed unless they have an agrivoltaics plan to get through OPSB. Yeah, so we graze a couple in Ohio, Kentucky and Tennessee. There are some in western Ohio that have just come online that have sheep on them, some others in south. One of the participants at our workshop, Madison, I believe, is the one, and then Lorraine has more community scale. And then Mechanicsburg, that project with Savion is going to have sheep on it through that grant. So, again, call me, email me, happy to chat.